Matt Lenihan for Boxing Social in association with William Hill and Empire Fights. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Max Kellerman. Max, what a fight we've just seen in the Garden. Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez. For me, a stunning performance by Teofimo. He came out there tonight and did his thing. A lot of things were made about his mindset in the build-up to this fight, and he showed that he's back at that elite level. What's your takeaway from this tonight?
Listen, Josh Taylor was a pretty big favorite for a reason. And Teo is the kind of guy who seems to fight his best when the lights shine brightest. Whenever he fought on Heisman Trophy night, he turned in his most spectacular performances as a rising contender. Then he got his first shot at a belt against Comey. Same thing, his most spectacular performance. By the way, coming off his least spectacular performance. And then he fights Lomachenko as a big underdog and had the best performance of his career. And then the next time he's in the ring as an underdog against a dominant southpaw champion who's really undisputed. I mean, Josh Taylor was undisputed. You know, if you beat everyone for all the belts and then you don't leave the division and you don't retire, you're the undisputed champ.
He was the guy.
He was the guy. And you know, like some of the guys who he beat for their belts have belts now. Come on. So you know, Teo fights that guy as the late money was coming in on Josh Taylor, who was already favored. When the fight started, he was almost 2.5 to 1. And Teo, I thought after the third round, Teo only lost the 10th.
I was just about to come on to that. So the scorecards, when they got read out, there was a few people who were saying, wow, that's far too close, apart from the last one. Is that a fair judgment? Were the cards a bit too close for you, the first two, any of the 115, 113?
Clearly too close, because this was not a difficult fight to score. There were a couple of swing rounds, as there normally are, right? I gave Josh Taylor the third. I thought I could have given it to Teo, but I gave it to Josh Taylor. So after that, starting in the fourth round where Teo pushed him down and then started high stepping him, getting himself in that rhythm, he was winning rounds by obvious margins because he was landing the big obvious shots, and then he took the 10th round off. And otherwise, you know, I think the range of possible scores are 116, 112 Teo to 118, 110 Teo. I had it 17-11.
Okay, what do you think about Teofimo now? Where does he go from here? What would you like to see him do next? So many big fights for him to be made. I saw Jose Ramirez, he was sat there, look, I'm coming back, I would love that fight now. What would you like to see Teofimo do?
I think a great fight would be Tank, because they have certain similarities. They're both well-rounded, very twitchy, power-punching figers. But for promotional reasons, that's unlikely to get made right away. So, look, here are his options. You do a rematch with Lomachenko. You do a rematch with Kambosos, right? Either one of those fights. You could do Devin Haney, who's moving up. He's the undisputed lightweight champion. You're really the undisputed junior welterweight champion. You know, they're just Ramirez, you mentioned, would be a fantastic fight. He's got a lot to choose from right now.
And in terms of Josh Taylor, obviously, a defeat doesn't define your career. You know, everyone could come again, and that's why boxing's great, and we need to encourage these 50-50 fights, because it doesn't matter if you lose, you learn. What do you want to see him do? Move up in weight, maybe?
Maybe, because he doesn't want to make excuses about the layoff and everything. But when you've been at the same weight your whole pro career, at a certain point, maybe your body needs to move up. What I saw from Josh Taylor now in his last two fights, he just looked flat. He looked, you know, he used to be a guy before the Catterall fight. One of my favorite things about Josh Taylor is when he was in exchanges, he would mix in and place body shots so precisely. That's how he'd be programmed, right? He'd be throwing combination, and in exchanges, the way he'd mix it into the body was creative and precise. And I saw his last two fights, I saw no imagination from him, and he was just looked like a fighter who was flat, and a flat fighter, sometimes that comes from being at the same weight too long. You got to move. Maybe. Although he claims that's not the case, but maybe.
Right, and finally, last one from me. We're going to get to see Errol Spence and Terence Crawford coming up. Everyone's excited for that. Give us your prediction, your take on that fight. What do you see happening?
It's a 50-50 fight. Errol Spence is a problem for Terence Crawford because Crawford starts slow as he's figuring his guy out. Spence is a high-volume, and yet also sharp-shooting, power punching, quick-handed, got good feet. I've seen him win against world-class fighters behind his jab and his defense, right? And he's a southpaw on top of everything else. So he presents a problem because after 5 or 6 rounds, when Crawford usually turns it on, he may be down on the cards, and maybe not by a little because Spence can hurt you. And then Spence can also take a good shot. So does Crawford stop him? So that says Spence. On the other hand, Crawford is the most, he makes the best adjustments in boxing. And he is the most complete fighter in boxing. There's nothing Crawford can't do. And so you would say just because of that, maybe Crawford should be the favorite. So it is, that's why it's a 50-50 kind of fight. And if I had to lean one way, I'd lean Crawford because he is, man, there's something, Crawford's just such a mean sucker, man. There's something about him.
Is he the best finisher in boxing? When he gets his guy hurt, he doesn't fluster his work, he doesn't sort of dive in too much. But is he possibly the best finisher in boxing? Is that why maybe you'd lean towards him? If he gets his guy hurt, they tend to go.
Yeah, although if you win on points, just as good. No, I think it's because Crawford, see, I was just talking about imagination with Josh Taylor, he looked flat, and how Teo was like resourceful. Crawford's the most resourceful. At that level, it comes down to boxing IQ. I think he's got the best one. I think he thinks the fastest.
Okay, Max. Well, look, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks for talking to Boxing Social, and fingers crossed we can do it again sometime.
Thanks, brother.